action to re-establish ambition, and action to rebuild trust, especially between North and South. The science is clear.
So from here at Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, COP27, we are now on the Tuesday of the second week, and things are literally hotting up, and we are all keen to see how it unfolds and where direction it goes. Now, I am with me a person who knows the inside of it and who also plays a very key role in pushing the important agendas for civil society. Harjeet Singh. Harjeet Singh is the senior advisor to Climate Action Network International, also, I think, various hats and playing a key role, as I said, in civil society movement. Harjeet, now we are in the Tuesday, and Friday is the ultimatum. Hopefully, it will not speed over like the earlier years. So, if we take that you have still 4 days to go, uh, according to your thinking, where does this discussion stand right now?
So we are still far away from having a text that can be negotiated. So this is the second week of COP27. Things have reached to the political level, but we have still not seen a proper text on various issues, including the cover decision, as we call it, which is a document that goes out in public, or even the issue of loss and damage, which is absolutely critical for this COP. So we've only seen the basic documents coming in, not really in the form of negotiating text. It requires a lot of work to reach a level where we can then conclude it on time. And some of the issues on equity, which are so relevant for India and many developing countries, are still stuck. In fact, we have seen rich countries removing or diluting the reference to equity across the board, and that's the most critical issue at this moment, because that connects with how much developed countries are going to do in terms of emission reduction targets, and how much finance they're going to provide to developing countries for mitigation and adaptation, and including on loss and damage. There is no reference to equity, based on the compilation that has come from the co-facilitators. So if you ask me, across the board, equity remains at the heart of it, which is going to affect ambition on emission reduction, finance, and including the outcomes on loss and damage finance.
So, this conference started with a bit of a hopeful note with loss and damage after a lot of fight, including from civil society and the developing country bloc, about including loss and damage as a formal discussion agenda. So that has been done there. So that was quite a good beginning. But since then, a lot of talks have been going around. But if you said that where the issues are, but can you just pinpoint where do we have the problems right now in the negotiation? I know it's early days, but still, where do we struck right now?
So, yes, you're absolutely right, Janita. The efforts that have been made over the last 1 decade, much more concretely, to get loss and damage finance on the agenda. We finally got it on the first day of COP27. But that's not enough. That's the beginning of the work to make sure that it now delivers in terms of finance to people who have lost their homes and farms, their income. And we need to set up a mechanism here. But what we are hearing from developed countries is primarily setting up more talk shops and more processes, and not an institutional mechanism that can help people. So, as civil society, as developing countries, we demanded a loss and damage finance facility and or a fund. The idea is
You
that
don't expect the facility to come up in Sharm el-Sheikh?
so developing countries, as we speak, are absolutely united. They want a facility to be announced or established here, and then the details can be worked out over the next 1 year or so. And that is such an important decision that must be taken to send a positive signal to people who are looking to COP and seeing that how we have been failing in so many ways to tackle the climate crisis, and people on the ground continue to suffer. So it's an absolutely important outcome that this COP must
So,
deliver.
number one is to set up a facility. Maybe the detail can be worked out later, but the facility needs to be announced. There's a developing country position, and you were saying it's a very critical point in the whole negotiation. That's number one. And number two is, what about the finance?
So finance overall is still stuck. So we are not seeing much progress on that. On loss and damage finance, of course, the facility is the first part, and then we are going to work out details on how money is going to be mobilized based on the scale, and then how it's going to be channeled. So I would say that part of finance is still a few steps away. But finance in general has been a massive concern because if you look at rich countries again failed in providing $100 billion. In fact, the number that they were only reached to was $83 billion, and which also has 70% loans. And so there's a clear deficit there. Similarly, on adaptation goal, they've not been able to meet their target, and now it's about doubling it by 2025. So we want a roadmap to deliver on that target, which should come out from this COP. And of course, there's also a discussion on the new collective quantified goal, as we call it. So $100 billion was always seen as a floor. That's what Paris Agreement very clearly mentions. And now we need to talk about a new goal that's based on the real needs, because $100 billion does not represent the real needs of people.
In fact, sorry to interrupt you, India has pointed out, in fact, as part of the LMDC presentation, that we should not talk about millions anymore, billions anymore. We need to talk in trillions. And India has quoted a report of the finance facility saying around $6 to $11 trillion are required till 2030 to counter the situation. And we are basically, if we assume that is $100 billion actually being given, that's not being given, that's a different story. Still, it's coming at 1 trillion. So at least 6 to 10 times more funding is required that India is putting on the table. What do you think about it?
Absolutely. We always said that $100 billion is like a seed money so that we can leverage trillions. And UNEP report that came just a few days ago very clearly mentioned that to transform to a low carbon economy, we will need at least $4 to $6 trillion per year, and that's only for mitigation. For adaptation, it's also running into hundreds of billions of dollars. So, and in fact, the analysis from the synthesis report of UNFCCC is also around that number, but not costing all the plans. And as per some estimates, we will be needing about $10 trillion every year if we have to deal with the whole range of climate action, mitigation, adaptation, and dealing with loss and damage.
So nothing concrete on that as of now.
No, so there are discussions on 2.1C, as we call it, which is about the financial flows. But that's also stuck again on the same issue because rich countries don't want to refer to equity, which is such an important principle to make sure how money is going to be mobilized and who needs to mobilize that money.
Okay, and so that's a two-part: loss and damage and finance. What else can be the major pointers in this coming whatever conclusion this
So
COP
at
goes
this
to?
moment, a lot of discussions are going to happen on the cover decision, and that cover decision is like the pact that we are going to achieve from Sharm el Sheikh COP27 conference. And the reason it is important because it's going to send a signal to people on what we stand for. And at this moment, it looks very weak. There's no reference to fossil fuels I'm hearing, and which is such an important aspect. India has made a very clear demand that we should talk about phase down of all fossil fuels. Europe is supporting it with the phase out language, and many other countries like Vanuatu are also supporting. And it's important for us to send that signal that we have to phase out the fossil fuels which are primarily responsible for the crisis, and that coming in the formal text is going to help us then develop our plans how we phase out in a more equitable manner. So that is another thing to watch for.
Finally, as we mentioned about fossil fuel card, that's a very important cog in the wheel. Now, India has been pushing, even in Glasgow and also here, that you need to talk about all the fossil fuel sources together, not only coal. Coal should not be singled out. In fact, without mentioning the word coal, they have saying in those words. And if you look at the proposed cover decisions that India has proposed, there are 3 or 4 points actually saying this, that uh, we need to target all the fossil fuel sources. But there are countries who are pushing on coal. So what's the stand? Because you are being one of the premier leaders in civil society working on this, on fossil fuel card globally. And what's your stand on that? It's coal versus or coal plus?
No, we have to have all three fossil fuels mentioned in the text, because rich countries who also exploited coal for decades have now moved on to oil and gas,
Right.
and they now want to position gas as a bridge fuel, as a green fuel. That's absolutely not done. There are so many challenges with the way gas is extracted. There are leakages of methane, and we know methane is even far more potent greenhouse gas. So we have to make sure that we move away from all three fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas. And rich countries are trying to smart developing countries by only focusing on coal, because majority of developing countries still depend on coal, and they want to continue to extract oil and gas. So, but we need to mention all three because you have to solve the problem a lot more comprehensively.
So basically, hearing you, it seems the situation is still quite fluid. Uh, Nothing actually has been concretized. No negotiation text is on the table. So things are going around and around. So my final question is the kind of urgency that was set in post the IPCC AR6 report, quite clearly saying that
Welcome to Climate Channel. Today we're here at Brad Bradford's campaign rally. On October 24th, there's the Toronto municipal election that's going to be re-electing city councillors throughout the city.
Saw all of the activity. You saw the sun setting on Danforth, going down behind all the no towers as we looked at